will pass on your grandpa's pigsty to you. After my beloved grandpa passed away, all his inheritance was taken by my parents and my sister. That's when they made that suggestion to me. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I expressed my gratitude and ran out of the house. Weeks later, my destiny began to change due to a man who visited my grandpa's store. Are you Tina? I am Christina, a college student. I lived with my parents, my sister, and my grandpa. I have always had a bad relationship with my parents and sister. It started several years ago when I had just entered middle school. From behind me, as I was tying my shoelaces, I could hear my sister's high-pitched voice. Dad, the pig is escaping. Is that okay? Leave her, she's probably going to Dad's shop anyway. Oh, I see, she's going back to the pigsty, which is where she belongs, huh? Julia, that's really rude. But that store is just like a pigsty. Next to my sister's pink and white sneakers, my worn-out black shoes looked deflated. My sister always got what she wanted. But I had been wearing these shoes I got a long time ago. I couldn't have the fancy shoes like my sister did because my parents wouldn't buy them for me. Gritting my teeth, I felt my parents' and sister's conversation behind me as I ran out of the house. Looking down at my feet as I ran, I held back tears that were about to overflow. Indeed, my feet are thick and short. I understand why I'm called a pig. On the other hand, my sister is thin, has a small face, and cute eyes. It's hard to believe we're from the same parents. Both my parents doted on her. She knew this and mocked me as a pig. My parents would just laugh along with her instead of scolding her. As a high school and college student, as soon as I could work, I planned to earn money and leave that house. After a short run, a shabby little house appeared. I rushed into the store named Anderson Jewelers. Hey, Tina. What's wrong? Hearing my grandpa's relaxed voice, I immediately relaxed. The store was enveloped in an orange glow, with several displays adorned in gold and white. It was completely different from the local candy shop, and certainly not a place a middle schooler would rush into sweaty. Yet, to me, this store was a place of comfort. Did Julia bully you again? Grandpa offered me a towel as I was sweating and furrowed his brows in concern. No, it's fine now. I was out of breath from running, and soon it didn't matter anymore. I remembered the new gemstones Grandpa had talked about before. Hey, the Italian gemstones you mentioned before, where are they? As I leaned in, Grandpa laughed and let me into the back of the shop. He owned this small building, operating a jewelry store on the first floor, and his home office on the second floor. Although Grandpa had lived at my house nearby since he had a fall, he had no intention of closing the shop as he still had regular customers, and opened the shop every morning. Watching Grandpa struggling to open a cabinet with his left hand, I felt a tightness in my chest. Grandpa, is your hand okay? His left hand hadn't moved well since his fall. However, Grandpa just smiled and patted my head. Tina, you're so kind. I loved that slightly rough hand. But by the time I became a college student, Grandpa's health worsened. He needed care. But neither my parents nor my sister took care of him. I had planned to work and move out. But between caregiving and school, I had no time for a job. Grandpa always cared about me, saying, "I'm sorry, go have fun every day." I understood his feelings, but there was no way I could leave him and go out. When I get better, let's live together, just the two of us. One day when I suggested this, Grandpa looked at me in surprise as he lay in bed, smiled, and shed a tear. At that time, I was seriously considering living just with him, not imagining that he would pass away just 3 months later. The house felt darker, colder, and larger without Grandpa. As I curled up in Grandpa's room crying, my sister scolded me for being noisy. After Grandpa passed away, my parents and sister only talked about the inheritance. How much will that store sell for? The jewels could fetch a good price, right? They discussed these things and handled Grandpa's funeral carelessly. Even though I wanted to send him off properly, they wouldn't listen and wouldn't even help with the funeral costs. The inheritance was about $300,000. And the three of them were excitedly discussing how to use it. Let's buy a car. I wanted that new bag that came out before. I want to go to Hawaii with my friends. I was locked in my room, listening to music through headphones. If I had to listen to those three discussing things with their strained voices any longer, I felt like I might vomit. When I stepped out into the hallway to go to the bathroom and passed my mom, she snorted. You don't even join the discussions and just lock yourself away. So you don't need any inheritance, right? Even though she said that, I didn't feel like responding. I didn't care about the inheritance anyway. It infuriated me to think that everything Grandpa left behind was being taken away. But I didn't want to talk to those people who could discuss such things so gleefully. It must have been around the time my parents and sister had roughly decided how to divide the inheritance. The three of them saw me in the living room and laughed. We'll pass on your grandpa's pigsty to you, they said. At first, I didn't understand what they meant. But gradually I realized they were talking about Grandpa's shop, and I gasped. My heart was pounding. Can I really have the shop? It's only natural to give the pigsty to the pig, isn't it? I didn't hear my sister's mocking voice. Thank you. That was all I shouted before I hurriedly ran out of the house. Before leaving, I thought I saw their stunned faces, but I didn't care anymore. Since I started caring for Grandpa, I only visited the shop occasionally for cleaning, and hadn't opened it. After Grandpa passed away, I had almost forgotten about the shop. Grandpa's cherished shop, filled with memories. I rushed to the shop for the first time in a while. It was a bit dustier than before. The building was old, and it no longer had any real estate value. Still, I started cleaning up the shop with enthusiasm. In his later years, Grandpa had sold off the precious metals, and there were only a few small gems left in the shop. My parents and sister must have thought these and the building itself weren't worth much, which is why they gave them to me. That was fine with me. I didn't care about the asset value. Having this shop here was what mattered to me. I sat in the chair Grandpa always used, looked around the shop, and took in the smell that Grandpa always had in this place. For the first time in a long while, I smiled. Then, I decided to live on the second floor of that building. It was where Grandpa had lived originally. It had a kitchen and a bathroom, although it was cramped for one person. But living there was much more comforting than being in the house with such parents and a sister. A few days after I started living and sleeping on the second floor of the shop while cleaning inside, I noticed someone peeking into the store, so I opened the door. I'm sorry, we're not open. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The person peeking in was a man of early old age, scratching his white flecked hair and looking embarrassed. I apologize for the intrusion. Actually, I knew the owner of this shop. My grandpa passed away a few months ago. Oh, I'm aware of that. I'm here for you. The man introduced himself as Douglas. He showed me a photo of my young grandpa with Douglas. Are you Tina? Hearing that, I remembered how Grandpa used to call me Tina. Not wanting him to notice that I had figured it out, I bit my lip and nodded. Just like Mr. Anderson said, you look like a really nice granddaughter for him. Douglas was a gemologist, and not only were they business associates, but they also went drinking and shared information. I learned a lot about gems from Mr. Anderson. I owe him a lot. And he asked me to do one last thing for him before he passed. After I offered a seat and some coffee, Douglas carefully took a box out of his bag. When he opened the sturdy case, inside was a beautifully cut large diamond shining brilliantly. What a beautiful diamond! I was totally captivated by how it sparkled. What is this exactly? When I asked Douglas, he smiled kindly, his wrinkles at the corners of his eyes reminding me somewhat of Grandpa. This is a diamond worth over $1 million. Mr. Anderson left it for you. I involuntarily gaped. Grandpa did? Yes, Mr. Anderson was worried that if he left it in cash, it would surely be taken by your parents and sister. Hearing that, I stared at the diamond in disbelief. Grandpa had always cared for me. I had never imagined he would go to such lengths. Please sell it before your parents find out about this. That's why Mr. Anderson left it for you. I gently received the offered case and hugged it. Hearing it was something Grandpa left, I felt a strong reluctance to part with it. However, I was indeed in dire need of money, and I thought that Grandpa must have been worried about me. So it seemed best to sell it quickly. Grandpa might have even realized that I would not receive any inheritance from my family. It was just then. A car stopped in front of the shop and honked softly. Looking out, I saw my parents and sister peering at me from a small, bright red car. When I stepped outside, they rolled down the window, looking like celebrities abroad with designer bags and sunglasses. Ah, the pig has come out. My sister laughed in a high-pitched voice. It had been just under 2 weeks since I had left home. Yet they seemed to be living extravagantly. We're going to buy a luxury bag. There's still some inheritance left. My sister smiled happily. That shop looks even dirtier now that I see it. Really? Julia, won't you catch poverty from talking to such people? I watched their reaction as if they were strangers. Their gaze then turned towards Douglas standing next to me. Seeing the unfamiliar old man, their expressions turned suspicious. Nice to meet you. I am a gemologist. I used to work with Mr. Anderson at the shop. The three of them vaguely nodded to such a greeting. Then, as if struck by a thought, my dad got out of the car. You're a gemologist, then? You know the price of the precious metals left here? Approaching with an arrogant attitude, Douglas smiled. Yes, of course. Hearing this, my dad entered the shop. Wait, Dad. I tried to stop him, but my dad, mom, and sister all came into the shop. Wow, it's so run down. It smells dusty. While complaining, they began to look through the few gems left in the shop. Which are the expensive ones? Let's take them. Hearing that, I glanced at the desk. The diamond Douglas had brought was still there. Yes, the gem you just showed seems to be quite valuable, especially popular among collectors. As I listened to Douglas speak, my parents approached. If I quickly hid the diamond, they might suspect something. But I didn't want these people to take what Grandpa had left for me. As I was pondering, my mom's shrill voice echoed. "What about this diamond on the desk?" I felt all blood drain from my face. Unable to do anything, I stood frozen. "That's a fake diamond. It's not of great quality, so it won't fetch much. This one here might be worth millions, depending on the piece." Douglas quickly diverted my mom's attention to another gem. "It might be worth millions. Wow, let's sell this and buy an even better bag." Hearing the price, my mom and sister began to rejoice. After staring at the diamond Grandpa left on the desk, my dad turned to me. "I'll give you this diamond. It's perfect for someone like you, isn't it? Pearls before swine, huh?" "Julia, stop it." As I listened to my parents' and sister's conversation in a daze, I watched Douglas. He nodded slightly towards me while explaining to my dad about a small gem in the showcase. I picked up the diamond case from the desk and hugged it gently. Afterward, my parents and sister took only the gems Douglas said were valuable and left the store. When I thanked Douglas, he just smiled and said, "No. That diamond shows how much Mr. Anderson cares about you. It's worth a lot more than just money." I couldn't let them have it. I hesitated for a moment but ultimately decided to follow my grandpa's wishes and convert the gem into cash. With that money, I decided to renovate the shop and rent it out. Now, another jeweler rents it, and the shop is regaining its former liveliness. It feels like the small but beautiful shop Grandpa had is coming back, and I am happy. As for me, I decided to move to Italy using the money Grandpa left me. I've always loved Italy, and since Grandpa studied gemology there, I wanted to live there at least once. Right after I arrived in Italy, I received a call from my parents. When I answered, I heard my dad's shrill voice. "Who's that phony gemologist? He totally scammed us." "What happened?" "That gem didn't fetch a good price at all. He said it was worth millions. So we even bought a new car." "A car, not the luxury car you bought before?" "We bought another one. And now, this is a huge loss." I could hear my sister's angry voice and someone else in the background, suggesting they were calling from the place they had the gems appraised. Sighing, I spoke up. "The gemologist only said this type of gem could be worth hundreds of thousands depending on the piece. He never said that gem was worth hundreds of thousands. The real valuable item was the diamond on the desk. The one Julia called pearls before swine." "What?" As I listened to my dad's voice, my anger from the past surged. "That was something precious Grandpa gave me. You all who made fun of Grandpa and me don't really deserve it. You don't even know its real value, pitiful really. That's truly pearls before swine. Do you understand the meaning of the phrase?" As I ranted rapidly, my dad, surprised by my verbosity, fell silent. That gem was actually worth over $1 million. I'm in Italy now. I'm going to live here. Don't call me anymore. $1 million. It was that valuable. Wait, what? What do you mean $1 million? Hey, how are you going to handle the payments? We've run out of inheritance. Though I could hear the chaos on the other end of the phone, I hung up. I resolved never to answer their calls again and set my phone to block their numbers. Later, I heard that my parents and sister had a hard time. Having spent all the inheritance, they couldn't make payments and had to sell the new car and designer bags, returning not just to their former lifestyle but to an even poorer one. I started working at a jewelry shop in Italy. Strangely, I found myself approached by various men. I became close with a regular customer of the shop, and later, we married. Now, I'm known as Madame Porco and I'm doing really well for myself.